You see a couple of new games, either in the shelf or while browsing, and after looking at them for some time, they connect with you. It seems like they are going to be of your liking. But before acquiring them, you check how long to beat. And there, you see those times. Either 5 hours or 100 hours. None of them seem to be within your expectations, and what was probably an amazing game was left behind. The topic of this video is, how long should video games be? Of course, beginning from the simplest of things until perhaps some of those questions I like to point in these kinds of vids since some months back. Now, this is a rather difficult question, because every person has a different feeling and opinion. There's people who says that if a video game goes beyond 50, 40 hours, they start to feel stress, while on the other side, a short adventure may feel like robbery, especially with high prices as the one we are seeing in these years. And this topic is filled with nuances, such as your age, free time, money, the genre of the game, level design, story, pacing, side quest, difficulty mechanics, etc, etc. So let's start with the basic. In particular, this gaming channel focuses in RPGs, but I have a good experience with the opposite side of the spectrum, with games like platformers and bullet hells. Of course, for these we need to consider current times, because when there were technical limitations, well, things were different. But once they were put aside, RPGs jumped into something like 40s or 60s hours in average, with some going as far as 300 hours or more depending what you consider as finishing the game. As for platformers and bullet hells, in general they are rather short, like 2 or 5 hours, also depending what you're playing. So since the get-go, there are games that in essence shouldn't be pushed that far. That is where other elements come into play. In this case, for platformers and bullet hells, their replay value, challenges, time attacks, finding special things as you advance, and so on. But nowadays, it seems like the number of hours a game can offer twisted into a sort of marketing hook. For example, it's going to be twice the size from the previous entry. And rather than turning into something exciting, some people start to hesitate, especially if the company in question is one as Bugisoft. Of course, the programming inside is also important, because each company takes things at a different pace. While some crunch their people, few others respect their time. But that may be a discussion for another bit. However, it is something important to mention, because there are adventures where you need to watch the ending multiple times before you can say, okay, that curtain can be closed. With this, I don't think anyone out there has the right answer for this topic. They are opinions, and of course this is just my opinion. And that is why I began with the 5 and 100 hour example. Both sides of the spectrum usually bring debate because, on one side, people wonder if it is worth paying, let's say, $50 for a really short game, while on the other side, repeated content may be the trick to overly extend experience, hence reaching the 100 hours. Of course, the main point is, what kind of experience are you trying to sell? Because they can also go both ways. A short game leaving a bad taste, or a long game actually being entertaining. For the time being, I'll leave the short games aside. At least in my case, when I had no money to buy games, I'm not gonna lie, I wanted my stories to be as long as possible, or with amazing replay value. And sometimes quality wasn't that big of a deal, considering that I got to finish torturous and annoying games, or completed weird challenges. Playing was the objective, and under those circumstances, I know many of us did things that nowadays would be out of the question. Like learning how to beat Super Mario 64 in like 40 minutes, Super Metroid in 30 minutes, or pass every Mega Man X without upgrading your armor. I don't know, those are just some of the things I have done. But for most of the audience who watches this channel being around 30, 40s, a better question may be, why do people avoid long games? As we get old, there are time constraints. Job, family, exercise, your significant other, and so on. A good number of times money is not the issue. Or in other words, a backlog may start to grow, because we want to find different journeys. Something to revive that inner child, which in all honesty isn't bad at all. But our perception is rather different, as we have seen plenty of mechanics with the pass of time. If we compare an adult and a child, for little ones the pass of time feels like an eternity. While adults blink a couple of times and suddenly your kneecaps start to make a funny noise. And if you've been playing like me since I was 4 years old, of course you have passed through many generations, executions and weird ideas. Few things out there will surprise you. And something funny might happen. Our little fella in the rooftop is rather lazy. In general, it tries to save energy. Ironically, it can also behave like a chubby kid in a candy shop. Not a candy shop! Jesus Chrysler! Okay, it wants to try things rather fast. And similarly, as we oftentimes laugh about shorters, reelers, and TikTokeros, whatever they are named, well, we can also mess things up by rapidly changing games. Under some circumstances, it isn't that big of a deal. But when you try a 100-hour game, unless it adds more and more interesting things to the table, it is going to feel like you have seen everything the game has to offer, which may turn into another dropped game. Personally, I don't blame anyone. Sometimes you look at the map and it is so bloated that this may feel like they had nothing better to do, repeating a similar idea over and over again. And to add the cherry on top, there are forced and slow activities, which magically can be avoided by paying some coins. That is when we say quality over quantity. The fact that people mod games to reduce this repetitive task says a lot. At least, that is one of the possible explanations, because this can take some darker connotations. Time is an entity none of us can argue with. It leaves a mark on everything, and sometimes certain events can turn cyclic due to its peculiar effects over matter. We just need to open some storybooks, read some bits, and things can turn into a pattern. On its own, that adds some existential crises, but then, we as a species bastardize their perception of time some more. Because nowadays we say, time is money, therefore money is time. And I've seen people look at their backlog and start to have a nervous tick, trying to be productive while playing games, either playing with two consoles at the same time, making weird flowcharts, and even sacrificing their sleep to keep on playing some more. Eso está jodido, my people. I'm not saying to go back into caves or things like that, but when time appeals to economic and political interest, and we follow like a chubby person in a water slide, then the moments of leisure, those fleeting moments when one can recharge, can start to feel like a kind of race too. The mere idea of looking at something that will consume time, an experience that may consume 100 hours, may feel like it is simply not worth it, and we accelerate the way in which we want to consume things, and not necessarily to finish other journeys, but trying to feel a hollow and insatiable sense. We grow impatient. We want to move forward as quickly as possible, because looking at that pile of untouched games has become into a chore. It is as if we stopped feeling those beautiful stories that take their time to unfold. In this way, one could argue that a story should end, when in theory, everything that needed to be told has been told. But somehow, we keep wanting to find that hidden gem amidst the whirlwind. Yes, I have also felt those moments when certain games feel like they are overstaying their time. And also yes, I would like things to respect my time. But what happened if we fought that unreasonable and devouring beast for so long, that we became into that monster too? We just want to listen to someone validate our emotions. Maybe we were not the frog that is slowly boiled, but the tadpole who happened to be inside the pot at the same time, unable to meet the same end, cause we just adapt. Perhaps there are moments when we need to look at that beast and try to understand that it is just passing by. Its effects are just so big for a fleeting being to get, and that may be the moment when we find peace. Thank you so much for watching.